Phillips. Let's give them a round of applause, please, for their support. Absolutely. And then Stanley's Northeast Barroom, they're our bacon sponsor. Verizon, 514 Studios is a lovely space that you're in right now. Skelly Video Productions, Sterling Cross Group, Make It MSP, and Muddy Paws Cheesecake. Let's give them a round of applause, please. We could not do this, what we do, without their support. So if your organization, company, etc. would like to support what we do and join the friendly folks up there, you can see myself or any team member, and we'll be happy to give you the information. We are streaming shortly, if we haven't right now. Okay, I got a thumbs up, and yeah, okay, I got half a thumbs up. So we will be streaming very shortly. You can check our Twitter feed for the link and share that with folks. Show of hands, who's here for the first time? Excellent. Welcome. We hope it's not your last. You can sign up for email updates and find out about upcoming events at SMBMSP.org and be the first to find out about all the new, fun, exciting stuff we're going to be doing in the coming year. And we hope to have you back. And we would love to hear your feedback about what you thought, what you liked, what you didn't like. And you can tell me what you like, and you can tell Molly what you didn't like, and we'll go from there. And next month, so we have, aside from this exciting event, we have another exciting panel next month. You're Not the Boss of Me, The Joys and Perils of Being Self-Employed. Killer panel. We're co-presenting this with the Fueled Collective to tie into a month-long series that they're doing. December. Okay, that's supposed to be December. Sorry about that. December 14th. So we have Mo Perry, Judy Jossie, Lindsay Gish, Jennifer Zick, and it's moderated by Don Ball. If you go to, this is correct, if you go to our website, you can get the proper information on our registration page, and there is an offer on there for 50% off their month-long workshop with each of these fine ladies individually. So should be really great. Come check it out just in a couple weeks from now. Not November 14th, December 14th. Whoops, we'll go back. Oh, and I just knocked it right off here. So while I fix that, I'm going to bring up Michele Phillips, and she's going to bring up the rest of our stellar panel here. Just a few words here about Michele. She is a Minneapolis-based food blogger, writer, photographer, content creator. I want to make sure I get all of that right. Publishes recipes and more at baconfat.com, and was the only person that we could think of to be the perfect moderator for this event. So, because you know your shit. Okay, so everyone give Michele a warm round of applause.
Thank you, and so now I get the pleasure of bringing up Lindsay Greene. Her handle is The Hunger Diaries. Hello! Don't be shy! And we have Rob, who said my real name. Who is the product poet.
Just like there is a story behind it.
And we have Golnaz, who is, of course, Eat Dirty Dish Minneapolis. I don't know if you want to give us a little spirit about yourself, just kind of tell people.
Okay. So hi, I'm Lindsay. I am The Hunger Diaries. I started my blog like 3 years ago in Florida, which is where I grew up. And then I kind of started to grow it in Atlanta, where my fiance and I lived for about 1.5 years, and then we moved here in February. So I'm just exploring all that there is food-wise. I try to be all over the country and hopefully all over the world at some point, not just localized in one area. And I concentrate more on video at the moment. So that's me.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the product poet. I've been a big contributor to coming to these events for a while. You're probably wondering why the heck am I wearing this little mask? There's a whole story for that, but I am a poet by background, technologist, entrepreneur, angel investor, a wide variety of different things. And I started my handle, The Product Poet, in 2012, first on Twitter, where I currently have about 112,000 followers after the recent purge. And also gravitated more recently to pretty heavy on Instagram.
And hi everyone, I'm Golnaz. I run Eat Drink Dish Minneapolis. I started the account probably about 4.5 years ago with the goal to kind of elevate the Minneapolis food scene, support local businesses, and just bring a different perspective about Minnesota in general that wasn't really prevalent back in like 2014 or so.
Awesome. So as you might assume, we have a few questions that we've prepared and kind of thought through. I think Michael will be running around with a microphone, so please ask questions because we want this to be as informative as possible. And I think we're going to start off with Golnaz about influencers, because everyone's like wanting to know how to do this influencer thing. So Golnaz, tell us about how you would suggest approaching influencers, identifying influencers that would promote a business well. What would your recommendations be?
Yeah, so I have kind of a unique background. I've also been an influencer and also been in marketing jobs. So my background is in marketing and nutrition. I've been a marketing manager at startups and done events and stuff with other startups as well. So I've been both sides of the coin. So I've hired influencers and I've also been one. So I understand what it's like to be approached by a company and what kind of things are, things I want as an influencer and which help me kind of hire influencers in general. And I think as a business, you really should be very careful who you choose as influencers. There is a huge gamut of influencers now, that, at least in the Minneapolis market, the food world is saturated beyond. So there are some tools you can use, some paid tools you can find. I think now because of the privacy law, they actually took away a lot of that capability, which kind of sucks because I used Iconosquare. But when the privacy laws came through, you couldn't search for anything anymore. So that's a little tricky. But since I have relationships with a lot of influencers in the community, I just leverage that relationship. So I would suggest either meeting someone that is an influencer or getting into a PR agency or knowing someone in PR, someone that knows the community. I just be really careful if you're just searching. Or also another thing I would suggest is if someone's already tagged your business, hashtagged you, it's a huge follower. Those are your advocates, and those are probably the people you want to work with. I don't know if you guys have any other input.
As far as influencers, if you're bringing them or trying to look for people to bring into your restaurant, I think, like you said, you should find people that are already a fan of yours.
Yeah.
Because something that happens often is influencers will go in, they don't like the food, they don't post anything. So if you have somebody that you know is already a fan of yours, then you're kind of like guaranteed some sort of post or content. If you're looking for like, how am I going to choose an influencer to like create content for me, to kind of like run my page, I think that's something, to go off what you were saying about knowing the area, I think you need to pick somebody that knows your audience too, that can really speak to your audience. Like, who's your ideal audience? Are they young? Are they old? Are they male? Are they female? You need to find somebody that is kind of a cross-section of who your ideal customer is, because they'll be able to communicate with them the best, like what your message is.
Excuse me, I'm new to all this. What's an influencer?
Every one of us is an influencer. So the question is what is an influencer? I mean, influencers are each one of us on every single day. I mean, we can influence somebody, whether or not it's the type of coffee we drink, where we're going, the venues we entertain. So it doesn't matter how large or how small your connections are. We all have the ability to influence others. But in the world of influencer marketing, there are agencies and restaurants that will collaborate with different people like ourselves that are in the food scene or in a particular niche, and they'll want to collaborate with us to because honestly we tend to take better pictures than a lot of different restaurants can take for themselves. And so it's really a relationship that is partnered between the business and somebody who might have a broader audience than themselves.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, so another reason I started Eat Drink Dish was like my lifestyle, and I think a lot of us kind of can relate to that. It's I've always loved going to restaurants, and I always liked recommending them, and that was just kind of my personality. And all I did was create a platform for that. And once that following grew, the whole influencer kind of tag came along with it, and that's kind of just what happened.
It's funny because my oldest son, he always says, "Well, I get more likes than you on Instagram." And I only have, 1/12 of the people that follow you on Instagram. I said, yeah, but it's because you're so narrow focused with all of your friends. Everybody that follows you wants to see what you're doing. Not everybody that follows me likes to see barbecue pictures, which is mainly what I post about today. And so you just have to understand, your area of your focus and your target.
And I'll add to that, social media influencers is kind of how we're looking at it here, especially with Instagram, because that's kind of, I think, where it started bigger, more so, because Facebook has dwindled just a touch. And so on Instagram, people know, like for restaurants, for example, people can actually go to an Instagram page for a restaurant and find out if they're open on a holiday, or what their special is this week, or what their food looks like, or whatever, before they go. So that's the platform, or that's the area kind of that these people are.
And I have something to add, actually. I feel like it's funny, like, people don't really understand influencers sometimes, but I think this concept has been around forever. And I mean, we watch television every day, or maybe used to, and it's the same thing. They have an audience. They have shows that influence you. They have commercials that influence you. And the more of an audience they have, the more value it holds. And so us as influencers are having our own networks. And so the content that we put out and the promotions that we do influence people the same way any other form of advertising would.
Perfect. So on to another question about social media. Who should be, as a business, who should be managing your social media accounts, and why? What do you think?
Well, I think I already kind of touched on this. It's just to find someone who can really accurately represent your cross-section of the market. I think it's also really important to have somebody who understands your brand's message, and to be able to visually design something that's going to be a consistent and identifiable brand for you. So they need to understand what's the vibe you're going for, what product do you have, what kind of what kind of audience do you have? So it's just all of these different things that somebody has to understand, and then be able to translate it and tell a story about that product or that service, and really, again, make it identifiable, because people just scroll, and if you can't, there's a few influencers that I know that when I'm scrolling, I stop, I know it's their content immediately. And I'm more attracted to that because it's familiar to me, because I already know it. And so if you create something that's cohesive, if you find somebody that can do that for you, then I think that that's gold.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, so I think ideally, if you're a business owner and you're just starting up, you should definitely be the person doing it in the beginning, because it's your tone, it's your message, you have the passion, you can probably talk to it the most. And then once you get to a point where it's okay, I can maybe hire someone, or I can pass this along, then that's a great kind of a pass point. That's kind of how I think with the success of my platform was I was obsessed with it for 3 months straight, day in and day out, listened to people, contacted people, engaged. Engagement's huge when you're starting out, otherwise you just don't exist. But it's just that obsession that you need someone with that passion, and otherwise it's just another robot kind of person, just social media for you.
And I'll comment a little bit about this just on Twitter, which has been historically my playground, which I think we might address from a standpoint of should restaurants be on Twitter, and they absolutely should, in my opinion. And so I've worked with a lot of the very large national chains on campaigns, Applebee's, Corn Bakery, Cinnabon, a bunch of different things, and they have massive teams that handle their social media engagement. There's different components. You've got community managers that might be handling your comments, your frustrations, your customers, then you have your content creators as well. So there's kind of a differentiation between, but as a small business or a local restaurant, you do have to kind of do all of that. And one of my biggest frustrations that I have, even just as a local person who might go to, say, the Edina Grill, I have used this with them, If anybody's from Blue Barn here, hello. But I will ask them what today's special is via the Twitter. And when I don't hear a response back from that, and I might be an hour away, I will probably go to a different restaurant. And so you do need to be engaging with people when they do ask questions pertaining to that, regardless of your platform.
So let's piggyback on that, and let's talk about like your top 3 tips for managing, running a successful Instagram, Facebook, social, whatever the social media platform is of preference. What are your top 3 tips for running a successful campaign or a successful account?
I would say consistency is number 1. You have to be consistent in your messaging, the number of times you post, just overall branding and everything. Otherwise, people get confused. The algorithm kind of messes with you if you aren't consistent. I think the second one is just being authentic and true. That really helped with my platform. The more authentic I was, the more confident I was about the things I talked about, and it just it comes through. People can really tell BS on social media when you're faking it, or when there's a sponsored post and you didn't sponsor it, or people can tell very easily. And I think the third one would just would be great content and context. So you want great photo and a great story. If you don't have a great photo, make sure that story is really compelling. I've done tests on my platform multiple times when I had like a crappy photo and I didn't think it was a great photo, but the story behind it, like it was it's a hidden gem in Minneapolis or something, and that story really resonated with the audience and people loved that post. But sometimes there's a great photo and then like a really fancy picture of a little tartar. No one likes it. It's like you really have to make sure the content is really key.
To piggyback off of what you said about consistency, I think that consistency is definitely important. I think you need to figure out what's reasonable for me to be able to do on a consistent basis and post high quality content every single time. Don't just post because you feel like, I have to post every day, so I need to post something. Figure out how many times can I reasonably post something quality and original, and how many times a week can I do it? Ideally, you want to try to do it every single day. And I think now more than ever, because there's so many people on the platform, and all Instagram or any other platform wants to do is have you see your friends and family, for the most part, you really need to come up with something original and unique that's going to stand out against all of the other content. I think that's key. And I think my last piece of advice would just be to continuously do research. Research on your competitors and their strategies. Research on who your customers are, where they are on the platforms. Like, who are they engaging with? So the more information that you have on like your competitors and your customers and all of that sort of research, the better off you're going to be, and the more informed strategy you're going to have moving forward.
Yeah, and all great points. I mean, clearly when it comes to at least Instagram, most oftentimes, one of the best business practices is people may only see your caption. So making sure your caption is done appropriately is funny. I mean, I just had a recent story where I just made this beautiful pastrami. I mean, if you look on my Instagram page, you're going to see this amazing, amazing pastrami. And I wrote the post to see if anybody was reading the content below it. And I said, I'm like, here's this beautiful picture, right? And down below, I said, it was the worst smelling piece of meat I ever had. It looked beautiful, but I had to return it. The place I brought it back to was amazing. They returned it all. And looking through the comments of people saying, "Oh, this is beautiful, great job, it tasted awesome." I'm like, do you not read anything? So caption is key in that example, okay? Again, because as people scroll through your feeds, the only thing they're going to see is about the first 2 or 3 lines in their feed anyways. Typically, they're not going to get down to the caption below. Always be engaging is one of the top rules that I always talk about. It's a little acronym I use, ABE. Just regardless of your platform, even just responding back to somebody just saying thank you for your comment is always a really good thing to do. Don't use automation tools. People can figure that out. Don't use emojis for your responses. But try and at least, if you want to beat the algorithm, use at least 5 words in your response back to people is another thing to help drive that engagement. And then when it comes to a top tip and rule is, if you do have complainers for your restaurant, try and move those offline. set up an email for your restaurant that's, social at whatever handle what your domain is, and to try and put those conversations offline. So that way you can go ahead and actually try and, figure out what the issue is, because we all used to hear before technology that, we complain to one person, they tell 10 of their friends. Well, if I complain to one person, I can tell 150,000 of my friends. And just one of my rules that I always do is I never complain, but if I do, it'll only be in rhyme or only in haiku. And that's only been about 10 times.
Try to follow that up. I'm gonna accentuate, if you will, what you said about engagement. It is social media. Social media is supposed to be social, and when people comment or leave a really nice review or post something, if you're a restaurant or business, if they post something about your business and you don't even acknowledge it, I mean, it sends a little bit of a message. So you should definitely have someone listening. You should definitely be acknowledging the people that are out there putting out great messages about your business. And if it is negative, like he said, I would definitely address that as quickly as possible, because the last thing you want people to do is see that unaddressed issue, whatever it is, and assume that that's the truth. Maybe it's just a one-off occurrence, but you want to be able to address it and you want to make it right for the customer.
Absolutely.
So, another note that a lot of people ask about is, how do you pick or decide who to work with based on how big their audience is? In other words, do I just go with you because you have 150,000 followers, or what would you suggest? What is your take on stats and numbers and followings and all that?
There's been a lot of issues pertaining to people that have inflated their social media follower base. So don't just look at follower count as a key thing. It's about the quality, not the quantity. And so, there are some very consistent metrics that you should be looking at, especially on Instagram. A typical influencer that has greater than 10,000 followers, their average engagement rate or like rate's going to be anywhere from 1.5% to 2%, about on average. So if you're looking at their likes and you're seeing in their comments and you're not seeing that, I would be a little bit more skeptical of their of how genuine their either follower bases are, or maybe they're just not resonating well enough with their particular audience. So don't pay attention to follower count, because you can have great micro influencers that have great content that can actually get a higher engagement rate, like the example with my son, higher engagement rate. So follower count is not always the most important thing, but definitely approach influencers that are going to fit your specific market. I'm sure we're all approached by different companies, and my first question that I always ask them is, have you looked at my page? Do you realize that I'm not going to promote? I mean, I do have a really cute Shih Tzu, but I'm not going to promote a Shih Tzu, or something on my page, because I've narrowed my focus and I really focus in on my cooking and my barbecuing. But if a grill product comes to me, I'm going to be a lot more interested, because that's where my passion lies.
Yeah. For me, the numbers always come into play when I get asked for like a campaign by like a big brand or something. So I use my analytics a lot. A lot of the insights that I use, almost at least for an influencer, it really, I guess, decides whether or not you're going to be chosen to be an influencer. So I guess having really good analytics is a great part if you want to make money, I guess, on Instagram. Otherwise, choosing somebody with high numbers, it all depends. I'm going to just kind of copy you. It's basically who's going to fit with your brand. Numbers is kind of, at this point, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's just all about engagement. Is that person posting every day? Does their quality of the content matches what your quality of content means? And then I usually just go, when I look for influencers, I go if they have the website, I click on their website to see how updated that is, when's the last blog they had, just how relevant and how recent they've been online, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the follower count doesn't necessarily matter. I think that, I know several influencers who have, a couple 100,000 followers, and they get 2% or 1% or 0.5% engagement, and then you have other influencers that have 10% engagement, and that's sort of, you got to do the legwork to find out where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And sadly, a lot of the networks that connect brands and influencers, and a lot of just companies in general, they don't have the time. or don't even know to ask about other numbers. They just say, I need somebody with this many followers or more, and they go with them, and they're doing themselves a disservice, because at the end of the day, and this is not necessarily how it should be, but you're probably going to pay less for somebody who can give you more reach if you're going with somebody purely on engagement and not on their follower count. And everyone's got, sorry, just to add one quick thing, everyone that is serious about having their own business as an influencer, it has a business account. They all have access to the same information. On their analytics page, they have impressions, they have reach, they have on every single post, they'll show the exact number of engagements that they've had between people that have sent it to their friends, have saved it, added a message, liked it. There's so many different ways you can engage, and all of that information is available with a screenshot. So never be afraid to ask any of these influencers, let me see screenshots of your analytics for the last 10 posts you've had. Can I see the analytics page, to see what your reach has been this week, whatever it is. I think those are magnificent questions to ask, and not just looking at somebody's homepage.
And that was where I was going with what Lindsay said. How many people have an Instagram account here for their business? Okay. How many of you have a business account for your? Okay, so maybe a third of you actually do. Highly recommend everybody switch over to a business account just to be able to get the analytics side, because you can definitely see. You can have a post that you might, on the face of it, appear to only have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% engagement rate based upon likes and comments, but your reach is going to be much greater than that. Right. So you might have a reach of 10 to 15 to 20 to 50 to 100% greater than that, depending on a lot of different factors. So highly recommend everybody switch over to a business account if you haven't done so. It's free. I mean, why not do it?
Why not?
And then just one more thing to add. The other thing that I also look for is audience, to see who is commenting and who is engaging with that influencer. So it's something that I think it's easily missed, but sometimes I see, for my account, I have a lot of just normal people, basically Minneapolis people that follow my account. Not a lot of influencers comment. I mean, they kind of just tag me and support me in that sense. But there are other influencers where a lot of their followers may just be influencers in general. So making sure the audience also matches what your audience is as well.
I'm going to follow with one last thing on this. So, comments, liking different things, influencers, brands. One of the biggest challenges is third-party automation. And last week, Instagram came out with a blog that basically said that they stopped third-party access to automation software tools, and they were removing followers and or comments that they deemed to be almost robotic or automation. So anytime I see just an emoji from somebody, I know that they've used one of these third-party responses, because they're following a hashtag, or they're following, all they're doing is saying every photo that's this hashtag. There's all these different rules, and so then social networks are trying to do a great job to combat those, to make it more authentic in your engagement, which is really what we all want, is we want that authentic engagement.
Perfect. And to build more completely on this, what do people usually ask of you when they hire you as an influencer or want to collaborate? I know we talked about analytics and things like that, but what do they usually ask of you? Do they specify what they want in a post? Do they say how many stories? Do they specify how many different platforms they want you to post on? What do you generally hear when a company ABC calls you or contacts you and says, we'd like to work together and this is what we want? Do you have any kind of basics on that?
Sure. So when I get contacted for a campaign, it can be in several different ways, but typically the brand or company says, this is the product that I want, this is the time frame that I want it promoted in, how do you feel you can best represent my brand? And so as an influencer, I then say, okay, so this is my idea for how I would create content for you. And I would, I'm going to create a video that's this long for you, and doing the following things. So they just want a specific example before they choose you most of the time. And then they want to have an idea of what they can expect out of it. So, of course, you're going to give them your rate, and then they need some sort of justification on, is that worth it to me? Is this price worth this engagement? So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it.
So I've gotten everything. I've gotten from what can you provide me, or how can we make this work, to A, B, C, D. Like, I need one post, I need 3 stories, and that's it. How much is it? Or I actually had one person that came in like, I'm going to pay you X amount. This is all I need. Thank you so much. And then I can follow up with like maybe some analytics. So what I've done in the last 4 years, I just created a media kit. I eventually had to create my own rate sheet. I had to really do research to find out what is the market rate, what are other people charging, because that just makes my life easier. Because otherwise, it's a lot of back and forth and negotiation, and sometimes they wouldn't even like contact you after a while, or it just falls off the radar. So I've gotten a lot of different things, and I think the best method for me is, here's my rate sheet, here's just what I can offer, this is what I can do. If this doesn't fit with your brand or your budget, we'll see you later, because it can be a waste of time after a while.
Right, and to piggyback off of that, it's interesting rate sheets. Like I have a rate sheet, and I was sending it out for a while, but it's kind of like, and as a business, you're going to have the opposite opinion. But for me, I don't like to sort of pigeonhole myself into one price necessarily until I know what I'm working with, And so as a business, you're going to want to ask for a rate sheet, because then they are just go flat out saying, here's my rate. Maybe you were planning on paying them more. And so in that case, you're winning, As an influencer, I try to be the one to get them to say something first, like, oh, well, this is my reach. This is what you can expect from one piece of content, like one video. So you let me know what you think is fair, and get back to me. But again, for the business, maybe not ideal.
And then, all great points, but there's as an influencer, there's several different things, and as a business, there's a lot of different things that you can do for this. There are influencer marketplaces where we can be part of, where I can log into. For example, I'm part of the Best Buy blogging network, and I love technology, Oh, sorry, that was a Napoleon Dynamite reference. But you can go. Kip. And so when you go in and you look at that, I can go through and I can say, and I'll use Best Buy. Is anybody from Best Buy here? No? Okay. So Best Buy will say, we're looking for 50 influencers to write an article. Here's the compensation. And what they typically do is they'll pay in a gift card. So if I was, I shop at Best Buy all the time. I love Best Buy gift cards. But I also love to be able to look at the products to see if that's something that I will do. So you can go through and you can see that as a business. You can do that. Easiest way for a business to get people is to either invite them in for a meal, to be able to see their product, to offer a discount in the case of and there's some rules, disclosure issues you got to worry about too. But in the case of when some of the campaigns I would do with Applebee's, when they would do Twitter chats, is they would award gift certificates to the people that participated in that. So there's different ways to be able to do that. For rate sheets, that's the number one question I get is, what do you want to charge? And I'm like, I don't know. So you do have to spend a lot of time. A lot of the things I do are really a bit different. When somebody approaches me, a great example I think we both might have done this campaign, Zing Zang.
Yeah.
So what I do a lot of times for everything I do is a brand approaches me, they say, how much to do a video? I will tell them, how much do you want? Because what I want them to do is I have them donate my fee to charity. So I pick a local charity. And so, no,
You're gonna look bad.
I'm just making an example. Sorry, didn't mean. But
Yeah,
but
what I mean is I donate all my funds to charity.
But I for me, that's part of my social karma of giving back. So in that particular case, the fee that I did for the Zing Zang campaign went directly to Second Harvest Heartline. And so, because I'm a big supporter of food and charity and whatnot, so there's different ways and approaches that that as an influencer, you can go ahead and actually do some good, not just sit there and do that.
And actually, just to add on quick to that, I think that as an influencer, it is a business. I am trying to make this my only business, and so you do have to make money, but where do you make money? I think brands are really the places to look for actual money. I think when it comes to restaurants don't really have money, so influencers should not depend on restaurants to make their salary. I think if anything, and as far as charity is concerned, I kind of consider that charity. You get invited to a dinner and you eat the food and then you promote it, and they're getting a hell of a deal, in my opinion, just depending on your reach and everything. But yeah, I don't really charge restaurants because, if they invite me in, I eat the food, that's enough because they're small business.
Absolutely.
I think we had a question over here. We saw a hand a little while ago. Oh, I was close.
So I run a social media account for 3M. I'm not at the big corporate level where they have 600 people working there. It's just me. But I've worked with celebrities, and you sound much easier to work with. The celebrities want me to write them the content, create the beautiful content, give them the captions and the hashtags. When you guys are creating all of this content on the brand's behalf, who owns that? Can I repurpose that in other advertising campaigns later?
Most of the part, it depends. It depends on who you're working with. I've heard with some brands that we own everything, you can't use it ever again. For the most part, I own my own content. I don't mind if they repurpose it. It's not my thing, but it depends on which influencer you work with. When I used to hire influencers, there were some that were really strict about their blogs or their content, and they're like, you can only use it till this date, or you have no rights beyond that. And some people are just like, whatever works.
I'll be short, I promise. One of the biggest things you should do is you should have an influencer agreement, because that will tell you your legal obligations to use that content. One of the things that I don't mind it, but I don't necessarily like it, is all of a sudden I find an article I wrote on my blog that has been repurposed without my permission on a restaurant's blog. I mean, just ask. I don't care. Just ask.
And give credit.
And give credit.
Always
just
give credit.
But
It should never be assumed that you have the rights to all of this content that someone just created for you. And if you want that content, it's just better to be safe and put it into a contract, like you said. I've done a campaign where I've been asked for several images on top of the content that I've created, and then they own those images as well. They don't own my content, but I've provided the imagery in addition to the campaign. So
I'll pass the mic down here.
As you're building your campaigns, how do you feel about, as the brand, following all the influencers that you intend to be asking? Is that okay as a first step to just start following them, so you start looking at their content and maybe they don't even know who you are yet?
Yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend that. If you're trying to find influencers, I would start following them, researching them, who they are, making sure they're a real account as well. And it's all about relationship based. I think the better relationship you have with an influencer, the better the outcome, the better the business transaction, and everything goes.
And I would say there's different ways to do it without them knowing. You can create lists. And you can create private lists, especially in Twitter. You can do different things to be able to track and identify to see the content without really saying to an influencer that, hey, I want to follow you to like that. Worst thing, honestly, for a brand for me is if they follow me and then unfollow me. I mean, that especially after I've done a campaign. I've had that happen many times before. And I'm like, well, all you really were wanting was the content then. And you kind of hurt my feelings.
used you.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Now I've lost track. So when I want to start a relationship with someone, on my end, the thing that I always do is send out pieces of my content, because that's really what I want other people to get to know. So yeah, I think on the reverse end, I would appreciate if somebody wants to work with me, especially if they're going to start asking for, a lot of people like to ask for a lot of free things. It's better to at least know the person's name. There's a little email button in their bios that has email addresses in it. So it's like necessary questions, unnecessary questions. There's a lot of things you can figure out on your own. And if you just kind of, like any pitch, you just kind of want to get to the point as quickly as possible without having any fluff.
Yeah. And I would definitely, the whole name thing, 'cause I always get hi eat drink dish or hi team or hi there, which then just tells me that you're just blasting.
Right.
Like that doesn't really mean like you really want to work with me. Yeah.
I get hi the. Okay, I know you're not real. But there's a lot of times you will see as a brand also too, if you're seeing somebody generate a lot of content for one of your competitors, so that's another thing I would say is pay attention to who your competitors are as a business. If you know that there's a burger place, and we all like burgers, I think, or we like certain foods, that there might be a particular place where I like to go to a lot, or Lindsay, Golnaz, you like to go to a lot, different places. So look at your competitors. I'm amazed at how many businesses don't look at their competitors to understand who is engaging with them the most. And there's different ways to do this. I mean, every single Monday, I get a tweet from Yoder Smokers that says, thanking me as their number one reach in their community. Okay, it's an automated piece. I don't mind that, but at least they're paying attention to who their followers are, and that's just what you really need to do. Especially, and I don't own a Yoder Smoker. I mean, I want to, but and so Yoder, if you're listening, hi. But yeah, no, but there's different things. I mean, one little story. So I have a Big Green Egg as my smoker, and I was using a competitor product on that. And the business, Kamado Joe, saw I was using their rotisserie on a competitor's product. They said, wow, we really love your content, but we'd really like it on our smoker. So about 3 weeks later, knock, 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 they delivered a smoker to me, okay? Yes, I declared that for taxes. Don't worry about it. But it's one of those things where you as a business can see what your competitors are doing, finding the influencers that are really an advocate for your business, and trying to approach them that way.
We have questions over here, and then I'll bring it up. Great example about them delivering a smoker to you. Do you guys have any other examples of kind of those surprise and delight stories where the brands are listening the right way, reaching out to you either before or after you've given them content to make sure that there's an authentic relationship?
Yeah, for me, for the restaurant world, I don't know if you guys got Fire Lake Restaurant actually hand delivers sometimes desserts to my place with my name on it, and they give me a cake once. Like, I've had those before where they're really personal, and I've worked with them in other aspects before, and that was beyond like you don't need to deliver me dessert, but I'll take it. That's kind of what I've experienced, and also I've also just gotten surprise things in the mail before of brands I've never heard of, and then there's always a note that says, "Hi Golnaz, da 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 da. Thank you. We love your Instagram." It's handwritten. The more personal, the better. We can tell when things are mass produced or blasted. So it's just from our experience. But the more personal you can get with that influencer, the better.
I'm the same, and handwritten notes are always great. And I actually just got one from the website I buy my cat food on, and I was like, wow, I'm so impressed. I just wrote it out, signed it was the president of the company or whatever it was. But I am the same. I've gotten a gift from a restaurant around Christmas. They sent just gift bags out to a bunch of influencers. I've received gifts from other brands that have just products that they want me to try with a nice note. So, I mean, yeah, as much as you can make it personal, like you said.
So it's a little longer story, but I'll condense it, I promise. The reason why I'm actually wearing this mask is a different story, but I used to travel quite a lot in my line of business, and so I would engage with a lot of hotels, and so another hotel chain, Starwood, saw that I was engaging a lot with Hilton, and which is the reason why I have this. And what I was doing is they knew that I was going to, because I would tweet out that I'm going to stay at a particular place. When I got to the hotel in Dallas, it was the Aloft Hotel. Not only did Starwood and SPG, when I walked into my room, the room was the same. I paid for my room, nothing. There was a very much beautiful poem written to me by Starwood. Okay? They knew that I loved barbecue. They knew the name of my dog, Charlie. They knew that I like fancy socks, which I don't know if you can see them, but I like fancy socks. There was a gift certificate to a local barbecue restaurant that was around the corner. There was an Uber certificate for me to go over to that restaurant. There was a dog toy that they left for Charlie. Okay? So they made such a personalized experience that, yeah, they knew I was going to tweet the heck out of everything, but that was so special. I still have that poem to this day. I keep all of those little personalized things. But they knew as a poet, and I sometimes wax on too poetically and long, but that was such a unique gift that didn't really cost them anything outside of their time and effort. But that really makes it a special relationship. They've since unfollowed me, but that's okay.
And I'm gonna add to that, and also the question that you asked earlier about following people that you maybe want to consider as influencers that you want to work with. Frankly, when I get notes from people or accounts that I've never heard from before, they're not following me, I've never seen them, I'm like, oh, and you want me to do what? So when I'm seeing people over and over on my account, liking, commenting, whatevering, and like you said, when you're watching those comments, and that's, by the way, building your brand too, because people are seeing your brand out there more. But I think the more that you build a relationship with influencers, with brands, however you want to promote it, before you reach out, before you say let's work together, I think that's better for everyone, because you're supporting each other mutually. They're liking your stuff, you're liking theirs, and you're getting to know each other. Absolutely. I mean, within reason. But yeah, for sure. It's, not everybody's going to post everything, everything they're going to post is something you're going to like. Right. It's like any other relationship. It's something that they're doing, it's a personal thing, or that's related to their professional business, but it's definitely something where you're getting to know them better. It's like, oh, like Rob just said, geez, he has a dog, I should think about that. It's those personal elements that I think the more you're following them, the more you're interacting with them, and again, engaging with them, the better the relationship you're going to have, the more you're going to know each other when you do work together. And I think, like Rob said, and you all had that experience where you've gotten the cake and whatever, it just makes it more personal, it makes it more, I think, authentic, and it makes it more special, and you're more excited about it. So the more you can interact, I think, the better.
And also understanding where your influencers' platforms are too. I mean, that's key. I mean, don't just assume they're on Instagram. Check out their Twitter account, check out their websites that we talked about, look at their Facebook page, look at where they traditionally like to participate as well. YouTube is a huge thing for you right now, and throw those comments in there if you like the content or want to at least do that. And also, don't be afraid to comment on one of your competitors. If you see a comment, I mean, I have smoker, I'll do a post of a particular, on one of my smokers, and when I see that another smoker is not afraid to comment on that particular picture, that actually means a lot more to me, because I know that they actually kind of value the content versus just saying, oh, look at my page, look at my page.
So a couple of questions. I'll try to keep them really quick. You guys have mentioned the algorithm. How much credit do we give to this almighty algorithm? Is it something to worship? Is it something to be mindful of, or completely ignore?
If you think about it this way, I mean, how many people are joining these platforms every day? They're so saturated with people. And so the more people you have, the less likely that your content is going to be seen. I think that's just the basics of the algorithm. And so I think, like I mentioned before, you have to figure out, and this is very difficult to do, content that's going to be original, authentic, and stand out from the rest of the crowd. Something that no one else is really doing. And when you do that, you get higher engagement. People know your brand better. I think it's just about creating quality content, like viral, binge-worthy content.
Yeah, I think it's always in the back of my head, the algorithm, just because it's just how it's just the engine of Instagram. You need to know how it works. Sometimes I do the whole I turn on your notification, because it is so saturated, and it depends on how active your users are. If your followers aren't as active as you are, their feed will be totally different than someone that checks it every day. So it's just, you have to just keep it in the back of your head and kind of at least I've seen from other people too, other influencers will say like, just turn on the notification, because when they turn that notification on, and every time you post, they get a little ding, which is kind of annoying. But if they're really a huge follower of yours, they want to know when you post. And I think that's for at least a brand, that's a key thing to do.
And there's different algorithms, right? There's Twitter's algorithm, there's Facebook algorithm, there's Instagram's algorithm, there's YouTube's algorithm, trying to understand each one. We all are trying to figure out. There's a lot of great research out there. There's research that says, in order to beat the algorithm, the optimal number of hashtags is 11 to 12. There's all these different things, and unless you work in Instagram, no one really knows.
Right. It's all speculation.
It's all speculation. In Twitter, where I have tweeted 107,000 times. I have really sore fingers. The first 60,000 tweets were all done on my phone before I found TweetDeck. And when you think about that, some of the biggest changes. So talk about data. I used to tweet about 3,000 tweets a month. Okay, a lot. Almost all original content. I was driving just under 2 million actual impressions a month, or engagements a month, just from that content. Okay. When Twitter changed their methodology of showing best tweets first, massive drop in number of impressions, number of engagements. When they changed a lot of the different ways you saw things, it really impacted a lot of different people from a standpoint of you just can't see that content anymore. They recently used to be able to open up your app and you can see, here's what I've missed since you've been gone. And so by depending on which platform you're changing, the algorithms you have to constantly try and manage and figure out.
And I guess when I was speaking before, I was mostly speaking about Instagram, because Instagram, there's much less control that you have. So you don't have any other way to go about it but then to create this amazing content. If you're on Facebook, I think as a business, you pretty much have to put money into ad space if you want to get any reach outside of your current follower base. And then for YouTube, which is something that I've been focusing on a lot lately, that's also completely different. You have a lot more control. It's a search engine. So you can look to see like how many people are searching for these keywords every single month, which is something you cannot do on Instagram. That's like, I'm sure going to talk about hashtags in a little bit here, but there is no way to know how many people are actually viewing these hashtags, only how many people are using them. And with YouTube, you can actually find out how many people are looking for these keywords, and then you can couple that with, okay, how much competition do I have? How many search results are there? Are there 10 million? Maybe as a small page, I shouldn't focus on that keyword then. 5,000 results, a little bit better, so you have to just be strategic depending on the platform that you're on.
So referencing YouTube, this is my second question, and just basically other social media technologies like video. I've looked at your 3 Instagrams, each of you, and I see that you're doing a lot of photos. I'm assuming with Twitter there's like a lot of tweet engagement. What tools are you using, like video, or other things maybe, like 360 video or engagement, things that aren't necessarily just fluff, but like things that can actually be useful tools? How do you see the future of those affecting your platforms? Like you, Lindsay, you say you're engaging with YouTube. What other technologies will you use in the future?
I guess I'm not exactly sure. I just, to be seen, I guess. Like, I don't know what's going to be next. I think video is huge right now, and that everyone should be creating video. I think as far as the types of videos that I've been focusing on, they're very different on the 2 platforms that I'm on right now, for the most part. So Instagram, I think people have the attention span of a squirrel. They are just scrolling, and if you don't catch their attention in the first 2 seconds, you're done. You have no chance. So for Instagram, I create videos that have very quick movements that can sort of just grab every opportunity that I get. With YouTube, those people are like, they're lifers. They're like there to stay. When they've subscribed to your channel, they're like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna just like chill out watching this content for an hour. They're not just like scrolling through. So you have to, I try to be more engaging on my YouTube channel, but it's still, I think, all about video, and I think it will continue to be all about video and getting to know the individual person, because that's what I think is irreplaceable, you know?
You know, technology is near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of different things. I mean, video is certainly key, but there's always different applications you can use. I mean, for example, one that I recently came across that I've been testing is an app called Clip-O-Matic. And what Clip-O-Matic will do is I can shoot a video and it'll automatically do closed captioning for me. And so because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I don't have my volume on my phone when I'm watching an Instagram video or even a Twitter video, or if I'm, running a staff meeting and I want to be quiet and I want to watch something else. I want to be able to see what that is, right? So a simple app that costs $4.99 gives me the ability to do closed captioning, which is huge for either an Instagram story or for something that's short form content. How many of you have a Twitter for Business account? Sweet. How many of you know that you can actually upload up to 10 minutes of video on Twitter? There you go. So that is a remarkable tool on Twitter that a lot of people don't even realize. We only think that you can put 2 minutes and 20 seconds of video in there, and there's a file limitation to it. But if you actually go into the Twitter business suite, the media suite, you can upload. You can basically create your own SEO within there. You can do a whole lot of different things just with the Twitter media suite that a lot of people don't even realize that they can do today. So just a simple tool that's free. It's available. So that you can do it to leverage your platform a little bit. There's always great applications that you can use to push content out to multiple social networks. Whether it is, back in the good old days when you posted to Instagram, you used to be able to see the native photo. Well, you can't do it anymore. Now it's a link. So what do? You can use IFFT. You can create a rule that can basically take your Instagram photo and push that out to your various social networks. Leveraging what's available to you out there is so important. I don't know about which platforms. I think you're on WordPress. Are you on WordPress?
No, Squarespace.
Squarespace. Yeah, I'm on WordPress too. Well, WordPress allows you to share that article to my Facebook page, to these different things. Utilizing those tools and technology that are out there that minimizes the amount of effort that you really have to do. Now, I highly recommend you might go back and edit, on those platforms, the messages, because sometimes tags will be wrong or whatnot. But utilizing certain technology tools is important. But video is definitely...
And if you want any more technology, I mean, I don't think people have to spend a whole lot of money in order to create quality content like this either. I mean, I do a lot of the stuff on my phone. Mm-hmm. I'll do a lot of my videos on my phone. I flip it into iMovie. I edit it. I posted it. I did it while I was Black Friday shopping. Mm-hmm. I edited a video and posted it. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be difficult. You just sort of have to get the hang of it. And then I use the Adobe suite otherwise.
And I'll use Final Cut as another good software. Different things. There's a lot of different video and audio tools that are available. I mean, audio key for any video. Audio is important. A lot of times, because I'm outside, a lot of times cooking, I actually have a wireless lavalier mic that I wear to be able to capture the audio quality a lot better.
Or a mic with a dead cat.
Or
like they've got over
exactly.
There.
That's great for capturing. And oftentimes when you're creating content, your audio, you forget about the audio because you're so focused in on the video.
Howdy. So far we've talked a lot about influencing, marketing. We know it's a gray area between those and just social support. I'm here as like a representative of a co-manager, co-producer of digital content for a nonprofit food production. So short of throwing a lot of money at social media, what could we do for video, photo content, let's say specifically YouTube, Instagram, to try to get over that plateau? We got good followers, kind of plateaued. How do we go step it up a notch, short of paying for it, really? How should we be presenting that, and then maybe even what are changes within the content itself?
So if you have a brick and mortar or an actual product that people can be trying, I would try to find the best bang for your buck influencers to get them to create content for you, because then you don't just have the content, then you have the exposure of their reaches as well, and you kind of get a library. I run a social media account for a restaurant in Atlanta, and something that I love to do is just invite influencers in for dinner, and then they take pictures, and then I have pictures to use, and then repurposing old content that's done well for you is another thing that I like to do. Sometimes I like to do highlight reels, so if you've got a lot of videos, for instance, you can kind of cut a lot of videos together into highlight reels. So, and then you can outsource people that haven't even been to your business or that you haven't invited in personally. Encourage people to use geotags and hashtags so that you have a way to find content that people are coming in and producing for you. Because outsourcing can be hugely helpful, especially with a small budget.
Yeah, and to add on that, so with Eat Drink Dish, it's half user-generated content and half my original content. And I had that strategy when I first started, because I knew out of pocket it would have been a huge expense for me to go out to dinner and take pictures and all that stuff. So what I did was build a community, and I kind of do that in some other places I've worked with, is just have your hashtag, which mine is hashtag Eat Drink Dish Minneapolis, and what we did in our bio was tag us, be featured on our page, and from that it just propelled into what it is today. And I have pretty much an endless library of content, because people want to get featured, people want to share where they've been eating, or if you have a product, what they bought at that store, or whatever. People want to share and they want to be heard, and that's what social media is all about. And what we did was just give that person a platform. Like, I didn't want Eat Drink just to be about me, so I want to be like, what did you eat, or what do you recommend? And so for me, that worked really well. And once that caught on, it just kind of it runs its own engine after a while. So,
and the other thing too is really taking advantage of every part of the platform, especially on Instagram, whether or not you're using Instagram stories. If you're using Instagram stories, use a hashtag, use a geotag, link to your website, create a store if you actually have a product, or even as a nonprofit, depending on what you can do. A lot of people don't realize even how to create a store and how to do that to be able to drive people to your website, either for a product and or a special, or to donate. There's some rules around that, but there's some different things that you can do to really utilize the whole platform, which I often see people don't do. And so definitely trying to utilize the entire portion of the platform in whatever you're doing is important.
And another idea that you could use is if you conduct a giveaway. A lot of giveaways are done by, you could say, if you have a shirt is your product. We are going to give away 10 of our t-shirts to the person who uploads the best picture of you wearing one of our shirts. And so people are uploading their own content, so it's already created for you. Your overhead is really small, because how much does it actually cost you to make the 10 t-shirts? But now you've got all of this content and all of this added exposure. So that might be something you want to consider.
You are all visually focused influencers, naturally, obviously, but I'm curious about, with the rise of smartphones, voice input, how your influence might be transferred in an audio channel.
Well, audio is something I actually love. So a lot of different things that I'm kind of a natural, long-winded storyteller. But I love to use SoundCloud as a great audio platform to be able to either tell stories, or whether it be podcasting. There's a lot of podcasting that's being done right now, which is really, I think, from an audio perspective, is something that I've just been trying to figure out, the right way to do that, because I think that podcasting, if you've got a great audience, a great community, and the ability to attract people through storytelling, whether it's video or audio, I think that's going to be very important going forward, and in trying to really make sure that you can really do some of the more that long form audio content is something it's exciting for me, as far as one of the new technologies that I think is going to be very powerful for a lot of different things. So if I'm a restaurant, what would I be doing? I would be trying to do some short audio clips, you can do some really short podcasting of introducing our staff. Here's our chef. Tell us about the specials. You can do weekly podcasts for, what if you have a new menu or a rotating menu, or you can bring in an influencer to talk about your food as another different ways. There's ways to bring in guests into those to be able to leverage that audio side, which I think is really, really cool.
So I think that radio is pretty much dead, almost, and so a lot of people listen to podcasts now. I mean, that's all I do. If you're telling a story, or especially if you're offering some sort of educational, I love listening to podcasts where I can learn something. And that's typically what I, other than my music apps, I will listen to that sort of stuff when I'm in the car. You can download them onto your phone and listen to them on an airplane. So I love them. I think that there's certain content that's appropriate for it and certain content that's not. You just have to figure out what is interesting about this content. Is it the visual aspect of it? Okay, maybe I shouldn't just talk about it then, But if it's something educational where somebody wouldn't even, they could either paint their own picture or they don't need a visual aid at all, then that, audio is great.
Yeah.
I guess to add something, for me, it's, I'm not on every platform either. Eat, Drink, Dish really, when we started, we actually tweeted, we were on Twitter first, and then within 24 hours back then, they're like, if you can get 50 followers, I think we got 50 followers within 24 hours. We're like, okay, that's good. We'll go into Facebook, Instagram, website. We did everything back then. And then Snapchat came later and stuff, and I'm still not today on Snapchat. But when I found out that Instagram was where I was like, I guess the content really meant a lot, I just kind of stuck there. And as a business, you don't have to be on every platform. You have to choose what platform works best for you. Sometimes you do want to research and see what is the next best thing or next big thing that's coming out. There is a new video app that I got contact called Firework. People are trying to get on that, or they asked me to be on that. There's one coming out like that. There's this VR and AR coming out in the future. Just whatever works best for you as a brand, what is resonating with your audience. And for food and restaurants, pictures really do the best. And so I'm sticking with that. But with the future, I like to contribute to podcasts. Like I have friends that do podcasts, so I do reach to an audience talking about Eat, Drink, Dish on different podcasts. And then I also do want to go more into workshops too and live events. So one of the ways I showed ROI as an influencer, is really hard to show ROI in marketing in general, is when I started doing live events and dinner events and providing a service to the restaurants that they can actually tangibly see. So what I did was I partnered with restaurants. I say I can bring in like 30 to 40 people. Most of them are just going to be regular patrons. And I will bring new faces, new eyes to your restaurant based on my platform. So no overhead for me. I didn't pay for advertising. I just basically used my platform to bring in new customers for your restaurant. And that's kind of how I showed ROI and how I continue to grow the brand. And that's what works for me. So,
speaking of workshops, do you have one coming up tomorrow?
Speaking of that, yeah, if you're interested, we're doing an Instagram strategy and the power of video tomorrow at Lynn Hall from 2 to 4. If you're interested, there's some tickets left. Yeah, thank you.
Always about promoting.
So on that note, I'll piggyback with the whole what works for you. We talked about the algorithms and things. What works for Golnaz, what works for Rob, what works for Lindsay, what works for me is not going to work for everybody. So you just literally need to put in the man hours to find out what time your posts should be, because what time the posts are is based on when your audience is most active. And back to the thing before where we were talking about interacting with accounts that you want to get the attention of or you want to get to know. The more you interact with them, the more you're going to see their content and the more they're going to see your content. So that's back and forth.
And I'll say on that, that's an interesting point too about, what works well. I mean, I would be considered at one point, I would say, a traditional lifestyle blogger or writer, which that's kind of a nasty word these days in the blogging world because nobody knows what that is. And so I actually ended up archiving just about 1,900 Instagram posts. If you guys don't realize you can archive posts, you can actually do that. And I really focused it in on what my content, where was I getting the biggest amount of engagements? Well, it's on my own barbecue and my own cooking, and so I took out all of the pictures of my socks and there's a couple of my cute dog, but I took out anything that wasn't relative to what my audience wanted to see, and really narrowed that down. And so I think that's just a key important issue for you as well when it comes to what works and what doesn't work. I found that video doesn't work as well for me on Instagram unless I put it behind my picture. So I'll have a picture first, video second. Tested it, tried it. That's what works best for me, versus other different ways. So you just constantly have to be trying to improve and change and figure out what your audience wants.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, I've done videos with food, just food, and they sort of tank. I mean, compared to my other content that I do right now. So I literally have to be eating things on camera in order for people to be interested. But yeah, you just have to pay attention to what you're doing and figure out. I mean, there's also within the Instagram analytics, I don't know if you know that you can search this way, but anything that's highlighted in the top part of your analytics content section, you can search by how much engagement you've had in the past year, like what post got the most engagement to the least. You can search how many followers you got, how many comments you got. You can search, reach, impressions, whatever. So figure out what people like the most and just do that again and again and again and again,
Yeah, I have a question about the analytics. Do you guys use the Instagram analytics, or do you recommend using a third-party Hootsuite or something for analytics?
I use Iconosquare. It was the cheapest one I could find, honestly, and it's actually really good. I use that Iconosquare. ICO Square. I think they're based in France. They have a really great platform, and it's really visually. They just changed their interface, so it's kind of, I don't know if I like it that much right now, but I use it a lot for client work. If I need to take a snapshot of a post and it has all the analytics, it's just like a way more advanced version of Instagram, because sometimes I don't like going on my phone and trying to figure out the analytics and putting it in a report. Or sending it to somebody, but that's one of my favorite ones. And then I think you guys use for.com or forcard.com. For influencers, it's a free platform. I don't know, I think pretty much anyone with an account can probably start one, and it gives you all these analytics from even to income of your followers, to what language or interests, and then it also authenticates your account. They have a little badge that they give you once they do a 2-week performance report of your account to see this 10,000 your followers are active and these ones are ghost followers. That's kind of a good one too.
Yeah, that's fohr.co is there for if you've got an account. There's different tools for different ones. One that I'm using right now is Brand 24. And that's a really good tool. You get a 2-week free trial. But I'm always about the free trials. So if you find platforms, do the free trials first. And that one's really good because you can actually set it by a lot of different things, and it does all your social listening for you. I think it's I want to say for a one account small business, you're going to pay their Black Friday special was $25 a month, which is really super cheap for monitoring, and I think it's normally about $50 a month for monitoring, which is really good. I use Twitter analytics a lot. I use the Instagram analytics a lot. For YouTube, which I don't do a lot on YouTube just because I don't like to show myself a lot, and who wants to watch my hands cooking? Not a lot of people, but I use TubeBuddy on there, which I think you might use that too.
Yeah, I use TubeBuddy. And then Google Analytics connects to your Instagram account or your YouTube account also.
Yep.
So I think YouTube has fantastic analytics by itself, but if you want to find out what's the best time of day to post on YouTube, I think Google Analytics is definitely the place to find that out. It's pretty comprehensive.
Absolutely, and I mean, if you've got a restaurant page and you haven't been spending a lot of time with Google Analytics, depending on your website platform, it's free. There's great data. You can see what posts are working, what's modifying, and I look at that every single day.
Yeah, and with TubeBuddy and vidIQ, I feel like those I use more for research. Mm-hmm. than I do for the analytics afterwards. So I'll see like keyword strengths. It makes things a little bit more transparent for you as far as what competition is doing. So you can look up a keyword and see, like it'll show you all of the top keywords that those people used in their video without you having to go into it and click on it. Like there's a lot of benefits depending on like the plan that you've bought, but I actually use both.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, and there's different things. Like if you are on YouTube, like TubeBuddy, what it'll do is it'll say, "Hey, here's like the 8 best things to have it for your engagement for your post." It's like making sure you have a high-res thumbnail, and it'll do it for you. You can just, you don't have to. You can do that within their things. You can choose the right cover letter. You can choose the call to actions. You can make sure you've got your end screens. You've got your pop-ups that come in different places, and it'll give you that checklist right there in front of you to be able to do that.
I think cover photos are very important though.
Yep.
So if you can make your own, definitely do it. I do all of mine on my phone.
Yep.
It's super easy. You just have to edit it. And then there's an app that, this is going to sound really bad. There's an app called Facetune, and you can like change the way you look in it. But what I do is I color the backgrounds, because you can just paint essentially with it. And so I color all of my backgrounds black color to make it less noisy. The app, it's called Facetune. So you can for cover photos, I like my skin to look great, so I'll just like smooth out my skin if I need to smooth out my skin. I'll paint one color in the background. Some of these apps like Photoshop Express have a blur effect now, so you can just highlight the area that you want not blurred and then blur out the rest of it. But I think that thumbnails are so important. Like
Right.
They need to stand out. I mean, there's a whole list of things that you need to do to really land a video on the top of the search results.
Yeah, and even on Instagram, or speaking of video, Instagram, a lot of people don't realize that you can choose your cover photo on Instagram. So you don't know how many times I've gone to a page and seen a black square of a video, right? It's like just choose the right cover, so that way you can have that. So that way once it's played, you can do that. You can also do that with the Twitter Media Suite as well. You can pick a particular frame within your video as your cover photo. And so that's really, really super important to be able to do that. Or even in the Twitter Media Suite,
Right.
you can upload your
Or
own.
if you feel like your video doesn't really have a good place to land, you can find something that best represents what that video is in a photo, edit it, and add it on to the end of your video so that it's there for just a split second or like a fraction of a second, and people don't even notice. It just like passes by
Right.
so quickly, but it's an option for a cover photo when you can pick.
Yep.
Let's talk just for a second about hashtags, because everyone seems to think that there's like this magical, mystical process behind, not everyone, but a lot of people. And so that's one of the questions that we hear a lot. How do you demystify them? How do you choose them? How many? Which is another very subjective topic. But how do you guys go about finding hashtags and involving your accounts in the conversations that you want to be part of?
So I would say the hashtag game has changed a lot since 2014. Back then, it was very easy. It was almost important to use hashtags just to reach people, because there was really no one on it compared to now. Now I barely use hashtags. I mean, I post now with sometimes no hashtags, and if I do, I usually make sure I have like location hashtags. So hashtag Minneapolis, hashtag St. Paul, or wherever that picture is taken, and then the category. Is it a burger or something? It's just I don't really focus on it that much. I just make sure it's more strategic based on my content, and I mean that's basically it. At this point, most of the hashtags are so saturated. There's like a million photos for like Huffington Post taste or something, and there's no way someone's going to find you. And you can also tell in the analytics to each post when you have a business account. If you like scroll down, once you click the photo, it says how many people came from your hashtags, and one photo I think can anywhere from 20 to 50 people, which isn't, for my ratio, it's not a lot. So I just, from that, I was like, okay, this isn't really working. Yeah, it's not really working at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to be strategic, but like I said before, there's really no way of knowing how many people are actively searching for these hashtags. So you try to just use local hashtags that you feel like people are probably searching for in your area, like relevant to your business. And then take into account your follower size. Because if you have 100 followers, and you're trying to go for a hashtag with 10 million results, even if people are searching for it, you're probably not going to be featured in the top posts. It's probably just not going to happen. So if you're focusing on hashtags that have been used a lot less, if you have a much smaller account, you're more likely to be featured in the top posts, which is really when it matters, you know? And for me, I mean, I have to use hashtags. I don't think that I get most of my new followers from like the Discover page, but I think that that's a lot of the reason is because people are finding me through the hashtags too. So it's just like the more that you've built yourself up in the other areas, then you kind of get placed where, you know, in the spotlight.
I'll talk hashtags 3 different platforms in 27 parts in 8 seconds. Just kidding. Okay, so Instagram on hashtags, I typically only use 3 to 4 in my actual posting now. I used to do up to 30, which is what you can. I just found that people thought it was very spammy, very different things. So just for my audience, I just stopped doing that. However, I put the other 27 or 26 in a comment. So I'm still using the same hashtags. The reason why I do that now is because I don't know how many of you can actually follow hashtags now in your feed. And so I follow about 20 different actual hashtags that are in my feed and Instagram, so that way I can quickly do that, and I can see that I can, you know, based upon some of my own activity, I know I'm seeing some people that are coming from that, but not necessarily from my post, which is a little bit strange. They're seeing it in their feed, they're just not seeing it through my actual post. Instagram hashtags are you know, one that you can, you know, I used there's a best hashtag you know, website. There's different websites that you can utilize to find hashtags that are important or relevant. Do that, but the saturation is very important. Facebook, I don't find much use out of any hashtags in Facebook. I try and, you know, if it's, sometimes I'll have to remind myself to go in and delete them if it's an auto post from Instagram. And then on Twitter, I typically will do, I'll do anywhere from, you know, 2 to 3 hashtags on Twitter. But what I'll always try and do, especially if I'm posting barbecue, I go by the Smoky Poet, which, so I use that branded hashtag, which is important for that. I also then will do like, you know, what I'm posting about, and then I'll always do like a barbecue one in that as well, usually. And then I move them on to the comments.
And I used to have my hashtags in the body of my post too, and I would just sort of add a bunch of lines so that it was like way at the bottom, because I thought that it mattered. Yeah. I have no idea what matters to Instagram, let's be honest. Yeah. I just put them in my comment section now because it looks better. Yeah. One other thing that I think people don't necessarily do a lot, they sort of focus on what are the popular hashtags, and if you Google what hashtags should I use, it'll list the most saturated hashtags in every single market, which is like not necessarily what you want. So if you think about like, oh, I'm selling this type of product, how would I, as a regular person, search for that on Instagram? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be some popular hashtag, but if you're a barbecue person, be like best barbecue in Minneapolis, or barbecue Minneapolis, or barbecue MPLS, or whatever. You can start searching for those and seeing how many people have posted using that hashtag before. Just be creative. Like, how would you search for something?
Absolutely.
Do you have any questions out there? I think we need to wrap up pretty quickly, but we want to make sure that everything's covered.
Great question. I always do. So the question is FTC disclosure rules, which is a great, you know, they're guidelines. They're not rules. They're guidelines. There's a lot of recommendations for what you should do. I think Molly might have something she'll tweet out with that. But it's very much important. I know a lot of very, very big foodie people that never disclose when they're being compensated for trips that are, you know, to a vineyard or on a cruise ship or other places like that. And I just personally, I think it's very important that you do disclose that. it's just a matter of how you disclose it. There's a lot of recommendations. Should you put the hashtag ad in there? Should it be at the front? Should it be in the post? Should you not bury it? Should you use, they don't want you to use sponsored. They would not like you to. They'd really like you to use the hashtag ad. Then that creates problems on certain platforms. So for example, if you Instagram is supposed to have an Instagram branded content tagging tool. So you're supposed to do, but it's not available to everybody. So I can't, I would love to use the Instagram branded content tool, for a particular restaurant, but Instagram says you don't have it. And so sometimes the platforms challenge themselves, and there's been some really interesting things, and they are going after micro-influencers as well. I personally know a handful of people that have actually gotten letters, and they have followers of like 10,000 people.
Yeah, I usually ad, or if I get paid, if I legit get cash for something, I definitely put ad or sponsored. From my account, most people know that I go to previews and media previews and get invited. So usually I put my caption like, I just visited da-da-da, and like, check them out. So like, for my content, it's kind of expected. Like, I'm going to be telling you about the next best restaurant. So I don't really, if it's a free meal, I don't really usually use a lot of like ad or sponsor, because it really, I don't know.
I don't know. It would sort of get redundant after a while. You're invited to so many things. It's just like sponsored. Like, is every single thing she's posting sponsored? It's just been, I agree that it's probably like PC to put sponsored or ad when you're getting product from a restaurant. But 100%, anytime I get contracted by a brand or a company, I always ad or sponsor.
Yeah, and if you read the guidelines in and of themselves are, they say if you're receiving any form of compensation. Well, define compensation. They don't really define what that is. Now they have some really good talking points of different things and of what they would suggest as best practices. But a lot of times I'm surprised there's a lot of brands that will say, we don't want you to use a hashtag ad or a sponsored, and I say no. I said, sorry, if you want that, I'm not your pit master for that, so.
Well, let's give I think we're out of time for now, but our panel will be available. Let's give them all a big round of applause. You can reach out to them all in their respective channels of choice. We appreciate you coming and hope to see you next month and December 14th.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in next week, or actually 2 weeks from now, for Social Media Breakfast. We'll be back on live. Gabe from Skelly Video. Happy Friday.